All right, that sounds good. Let's do it. So, welcome to our meeting today. We're so thrilled to have you with us. What we're going to talk about today will follow up from yesterday's webinar. I don't know if any of you were able to attend that. I could not attend it in real time, but I watched it last night and it was wonderful. So, we're going
Oh,
to talk a little bit about that. Even if you were or were not there, we'll provide some scaffolding if you weren't able to attend. If we have time left over, we'll talk about some of the other April celebrations and then ask you whatever you need from the group because we want to make sure that we honor that time and why you're here. So if you don't know me, my name is Sherry Collins. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and it's great to see some familiar names and perhaps few new people on the call as well. So before we get started, let's please drop our names and our locations in the chat. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same just to get us started.
and
Of
as you're doing that,
Texas.
Sherry, I'll say, I'm Liza Wisner and I'm in Texas.
Ah, I love it. Welcome to the call, my friend. And Megan, of course. Hi, Megan. I haven't seen you for a while. Rachel, welcome, New Jersey. Southern California. Yes, I knew that, Barbara. I'm so glad you're here and safe travels the rest of the day today. Anybody else popping through? I think that's all I see for right now.
I see Rachel from New Jersey,
Yep.
Kevin
Oh,
from northern Minnesota, not Minnesota, northern Minnesota. Explain, Kevin,
awesome.
explain. No, I'm kidding.
Kevin, yours had popped forward on me, so I didn't see you initially, but I'm glad that you're here. And then we have Ashika, yay, from Arizona. Oh, it just means it's colder. So true, Kevin. Good point, good point. So anyway, like I said, I'm joining from Omaha, lands that have been the site of human activity for hundreds and thousands of years. And when we talk about our locations and where we're from, we're really talking about part of us, who we are, part of our past, part of our present, and part of our future. So Omaha was the traditional land served by many different tribes, the Omaha tribe, Ponca, Pawnee, Sioux, Oto, and many others that have been forgotten. So we honor these people, especially honoring their elders, past, present, and emerging. If you know of the names of Indigenous people from your area, would you feel free to drop those in the chat as well? And I'll just pause for a moment, give you time to maybe figure that out if you don't know. Okay, and that is that pronounced Lipan or Lipin Apache?
I I've heard
Lipan.
it say Lapon
Oh,
Apache,
Lapon Apache.
but
Okay.
then I've heard other people say Lipan Apache.
Mhm.
So I don't know if it's either way, La
Yeah.
Apache in Texas, here in Texas,
Okay.
and
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Colorado
Very good.
also.
Of course, Dakota. Yeah. And then how do you say the second part? Ojibwe?
Ojibwe.
Ojibwe. Oh, yep. Of course. Now that makes sense. Thanks for sharing that, Kevin. But it's important to acknowledge. But thank you again for joining. If you are new to our call, I'm trying to look at all the names real quickly. If we have anybody that's new, please unmute and tell us a little bit about you, perhaps what brought you to our group today. And I can't tell for sure, Lisa, if any of those names look new to you. I was saying before the call started, I had to miss the last 2 months because I'm working on a chief well-being officer certification. And unfortunately, it happened right at this time. Hi, my friend Matt. How are you? You're doing what I did the last few months, Matt. I just popped in to say hi and then I was out of here. It's great
Yeah,
to see you. Oh my gosh. Love,
I
love, love.
I don't know if anyone is brand new, but
Okay.
anybody who feels maybe like introducing themselves,
Ah,
feel free to do that. And I can start. I'm Lisa Wisner, and I am a co-facilitator of this DEI. I'm still calling it DEI, y'all. This
I
workplace culture club, a culture club. We're the culture club now. We need a band like music or something because
I
I
was about to
kind of
say
like.
that. I think there's a song that
I
we
know. I
could
keep
play
thinking
for that.
culture club sounds like we're a band.
Chameleon.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. We definitely need a mood, some music to like
Right. That's
get us
exactly
going.
right.
But yeah, I get to work closely with Megan Isasi, Matt Houston, Sherry Collins, and Sean, who's not here right now. And we kind of help facilitate this group. So yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah. I was texting with Sean this morning, as a matter of fact, so he's with us in spirit. All right, let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides. I just put together a couple slides. Ah, okay, how are we seeing? Okay.
Looks great.
And I was telling Lisa, I just put these together quickly, just with a few statistics, because I realize some people need to see the information rather than just listening to me. So I don't want you to think we're going to talk through a whole PowerPoint. I have 4 slides that have some information on it to share. So let's talk about April celebrations. So here are some April-ish, I called it, ideas that maybe we can talk about today. I think most of our time will probably be spent on following up on autism because it's such a hot topic. We had Equal Pay Day in March, so I was curious if we have time left, if any of your organizations are doing gap analysis or pay analysis. Mother Earth Day, anything new on that at your workplace or recycling? International Day of Peace. How is peace a part of this work that we do? I thought World Book Day kind of tripped my brain because I thought maybe folks have resources or something they've read that might fit in there. I'm wondering if anyone is doing Holocaust Remembrance Day. There's many, many cultural celebrations. And I also put National Pet Day down, not as a joke. Some of you might think, that's funny, Sherry, that you put that in. But I wanted to ask if any of you have policies about bringing your pets to work, if any of you have grief policies in your HR, and if you are being offered pet insurance as a benefit. And those all came to mind because I was at Disrupt HR in Omaha. I don't know if any of you have been to a Disrupt event, but they're so cool. And one of our sponsors talked about how they're offering pet insurance now as a benefit and how many people in their org are taking advantage of it. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting piece of some of the work that we do. So here's some stats I just wanted to share with you. And again, just putting them here so you can see them and not just have to listen. So from the webinar, the first two were provided just under autism specifically, and that 85% are underemployed or unemployed. Staggering number if you weren't aware of that. And 50 to 70% are working part-time or jobs that are below their skill level. So I wanted to make sure, though, that I gave credit that those came from the webinar. And then the other four were just a few interesting things that I found as I was researching for today. 81% of companies have not reviewed HR policies for neurodiversity. 81%. So look at the work there is to do. Look at the opportunities there is for work. And then I thought it was interesting, 7% of companies have a formal neurodiversity plan. So again, so much work that could be done. The fifth bullet is super interesting to me because I'm always interested in who is acknowledging their disabilities at work and who is masking parts of their identity. 80% of ND employees feel pressure to have to mask their identity at work. And then think of all those pieces that come with masking: retention, productivity, belonging, all of those pieces that we measure. And then 76% of employers don't accommodate ND candidates in hiring. And with that, that means we're not even getting them in the door. So think of this huge talent pool we have that we're not even accessing because of outdated policies or procedures that we have in our orgs. So I'm just going to pause and ask, does anybody have statements, thoughts, feelings around any of those statistics before we get into more specifics of the webinar? So I will pause and give time to hear your beautiful voices. What stands out to you?
85% underemployed or unemployed. It's just such a shocking number that only 15%
Right.
are getting what they need to be,
Yeah.
to thrive in our environment, in our society. Like, you have to have a full-time job, for the most part.
Right.
Unless you have familial support and can, navigate that way. But that's a shocking number.
Yeah, it is a shocking number. I agree. And same what I said before, look at the talent pool that we are missing. At least where I'm from, we do have a low unemployment rate, but we still have a lot of seats that we just cannot fill. And I always feel like we are missing these huge groups of people that we're not accommodating for. Thank you, Jocelyn, for getting us started. I appreciate you.
I would just say that the 81% of companies that haven't reviewed their policies for ND inclusion, that is shocking. At least it was when you said it. And then I thought, well, we haven't done that either.
Mhm.
So it just is like, oh my gosh, yeah, not even thought about that. So that's definitely something on our list now.
That's awesome. Thanks for
Thanks,
adding
Sharon,
that to
for
your
adding to
list.
my to-do list.
Yes, you're welcome. I'd love to do that. And you'll love when we start talking about the webinar because her tagline was from awareness to action. So, Kevin, you're embodying that right now. And I always say that about learning and development. Yes, it's great to come and learn, but then what are your action steps going to be? What are you going to do with it? So, Kevin, thank you so much for sharing that. Matt, you look like you're unmuted. What can you add before you have to jump off the call?
Listen, Sherry, I love this. And if was this what the webinar was talking about yesterday? Is that the
Yeah, the
webinar?
first, it was autism awareness, and the lady identified as an autism mom. She's an expert in the field, a leader, a champion, incredible. You'll have to watch the recording. It's really, really good. The first two stats are from her webinar, and then the other four I just pulled.
Adding that to my to-do list. But so I have so many thoughts, questions, ideas surrounding this.
Mhm.
Um, I think how so I'm just gonna kind of brain blurb out
Yeah,
to
do it.
everybody in a safe space.
Yes.
I think one thing that I have a struggle with sometimes, especially when it comes to neurodiversion and neuroinclusion, is that everything is a spectrum.
Mhm.
And so when we say like 85% are underemployed or unemployed, specifically, I'm guessing that's autistic individuals. Um, and as opposed to neurodiversion, which is such a huge umbrella, and I was just on a panel that was addressing it a few weeks ago, and someone was saying it's really important to differentiate between abled versus disabled because there's
Mm,
a lot of people in the neurodiverse bubble that don't consider themselves disabled. And
right.
so when we're looking at statistics like this, are we determining are these people who are like considering themselves disabled, abled, the full spectrum? So I think to me that's kind of hard
Mhm.
to I guess that's one thing that stands out to me. It's also just really upsetting
Yeah.
that we aren't looking at these things and having more of a discussion. But I also don't know how that should look because when we think of and I'm so sorry, y'all. This is just very timely. My brain has been on this because when we think of like special education in school, do we want to have programs that are specifically set up for neurodivergent individuals, which is then othering them in some way, shape, or form, but also giving them opportunity? Or is our goal to line up and include neurodivergent individuals? Because I was doing some research and like Ernst and Young has neurodiversity centers of excellence. And on the one hand, I'm like, that's really cool that like they're actively going out recruiting neurodivergent people and trying to find these things that they're really good at. On the other hand, that's also still stating you're different.
Mhm.
And like we want to embrace your difference, but it's also still kind of saying, oh, we have a specific center of excellence that's just for neurodivergent people. And
Mhm.
I'm kind of torn on
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm wondering if it can be a yes and, Matt.
I
And
just
I don't know if that would even help your brain to be like, okay, we can have both because maybe it is a yes and. And just to clarify on the stats, the top two are autism specific, and the
okay.
bottom four stats are the whole umbrella of neurodiversity, just to clarify.
and
Um,
could I
yes,
add to that
please.
conversation just because I'm pretty intimately aware of like inclusion programming in education, and that's kind of my background. I'm an educator, and with family members that are in programs like this, where it's an inclusion program, like they have a specific program built in the traditional campus. They go to, you know, classrooms that are the traditional classroom, and then they have like a separate classroom that helps support them alongside of it. So it's like you get the real world, right? You're in the real world, you're dealing with the real world problems, but you also have that like support on the side so that if somebody like needs extra time to like step out and have like the feelings that they have and needs extra time or whatever it is, they have that like support. So in education in California, at least, it's been my experience where we want to push students in as much as possible into the traditional classroom alongside having that support. So it's like we're not setting them up to be in the real world and they don't know what the norm is, right? You want to get them as exposed as possible to what's the norm so that they can be successful when they transition into the workforce and things like that. So
Yeah. Jocelyn, you stated that very eloquently. I also am an educator. I'm not in the classroom right now, but I remain certified. And I think a lot of that too is educating teachers so they understand and have more awareness so they can be better. Like the more they learn, the better they can be. And yeah, with one of my expertise areas as an educator was gifted education. So same kind of thing, like we had gifted enrichment within the classroom. Sometimes they were pulled for special projects. And then there's also in some districts gifted schools. So yes, then math, that kind of is othering them, if you want to use that terminology, on a separate campus. So that's where my head, and maybe it's just a way of justifying it to say like that yes and framework, that it can be both and it needs to be both and, I believe. So thank you for all of that information though. That's really great. And I love that it's timely for you, Matt. Yeah. Anybody else want to comment on the stats before we go on? I don't want to spend too much time on it, but if you're interested in it, we
Yeah,
definitely can spend
I
time.
wanted to, yeah, I wanted to just mention
Yeah.
that there's the conversation about 80% of neurodivergent employees feel pressure to mask their identity at work.
Mhm.
I will say that that's typical of any person who feels other, right? So like it's not just neurodivergent, right? People who are like, nope, I am not letting you know that I have a disability because of the bias and the stereotypes, like I don't want to be seen as like, oh, you can't handle it because remember you told us that you don't like
Yes.
pressure, I don't know. So like you don't want to be in that situation, right? Because maybe you have ways to handle it.
Mhm.
It's definitely something that I think that affects every identity. Everybody is masking something at work. We're showing our representatives. So I would say this, like, as far as organizations, this status is may not ever change because just the norm of being in a workplace where humans are the ones making the decisions on your promotion and your tenure, and whether that makes a difference to you getting the next role or whatever, right? Like it's just I don't think it's ever gonna change. And I hate to be the downer, but I feel like that statistic is it's a human issue, It's not an issue of the company now. There's nothing the company can do. The only thing the company can do then is just create accommodations across the board, regardless of what somebody's situation is, where they feel like whatever they need to disclose, they're not disclosing, whether it's a health issue that they don't want to disclose, or a pregnancy or whatever, like there's so many reasons people don't disclose things.
Right on. And that goes along with research from CDC, where they say nationally 27% of adults in the United States have a diagnosed disability. But when we compare that to HRIS data in the organizations, only 3 to 5% show up. So there's that huge gap where some of the folks are probably not employed at all, right? Some are perhaps retired. So you can explain away some of that percentage. But a big part of that percentage is, yeah, I don't know who I can trust at work. I don't know if I can trust HR to keep things private. Yes, I know. I see you. I see you. I see you. And do I want the stigma? Because how is that going to impact me for promotions, or will I perhaps be coached out? So that could be a topic for a whole webinar right there. Okay, let's move on. So speaking of the webinar yesterday, yes, I encourage all of you to go back and watch it. Did anybody perhaps get to see it in real time yesterday? Okay. So, like I said, she focused on awareness to action, which I love. And I even have that in the subtitle of some of the work that I do. But she talked about the employee life cycle, like we've alluded to, which is super interesting. How do we bring people in? How do they access learning and development? How are they coached or mentored along the way? How are they set up for success? Or are they coached out? and exit the organization. How bias shows up, and I heard Lisa use the word bias when she was talking, like that's a huge part of this. I love that she talked about how do we use our privilege. And sometimes, unfortunately, some people who do privilege workshops, people sometimes leave those feeling like I feel like a horrible person because I have privilege. And I like to flip the switch and say, yeah, we have privilege. How can we use it in the best way to uplift other people or to open doors for other people? So she talked a little bit about that. Modifications and accommodations. So Matt, some of these two may help frame your brain a little bit about some of this content. She asked if organizations are doing listening circles or focus groups to get information from the people that it impacts. I also loved that she used the words inclusion and equity right and left, and she did not apologize for it because she kept saying, that's what this work is. We have to use the words. She talked a little bit at the very beginning about change and change cycle. And I think that's always interesting. Is your organization perhaps change averse and status quo is just kind of okay? And then a beautiful part, and I love learning through scenarios. She talked through an interview scenario, an interview with overstimulation, someone saying they needed to have their camera off, someone saying that they can't make small talk. And then some of these springboarded into, oh, then you can't be a leader for us. And then that piece again on disclosing or not. And then finally, she talked about skills that they can bring that are beautiful, detail, innovation, feedback, focus, and much, much more. So anything there strike you or something that perhaps you have seen working successfully in your organizations that you'd like to chat about, or anything you might want to learn more about? Lisa and I can fill in some of those gaps perhaps. So again, I'm going to stop talking because we want to hear from you all.
It's not on this list, but one of the things that stood out to me that I'm thinking about how I can incorporate it within my organization. And that was when she focused on glow and grow.
Oh yeah, that was
I
great
thought
too.
that was really, really great. And what I took away from that is glow, finding opportunities to highlight, spotlight talent, and then grow, having opportunities to encourage people, in terms of development, but not just development, learning work skills or soft skills, but emotional intelligence also came up for me when I think about the grow aspect. And I'm also, because of yesterday's webinar, I'm putting together a listening circle specifically around neurodiversity. So yeah, thank you for putting this list together.
Yes, thank you for adding the glow and grow. And I loved that so much. I'm shocked that I forgot to add that to the list because it's so great. Thanks for bringing that forward. And kudos on your focus groups. And maybe you can follow up with us in a future call and let us know how that goes. Because I always think that follow-up is really important so we can see maybe what you learned or how we can make it better.
Another thing I was gonna say was she had a few of these, like glow and grow, and then every time I would have a conversation with her, she would say, move from intention to impact or something. I don't know. There was a lot of those things where I guess you could see how her brain is thinking. She kind of thinks in these words that make, like, I don't know, for me, it's memorable when you talk like that to people, right? They kind of have these phrases that they can carry with them after they've shared them. So that's one thing I did enjoy was hearing her style of talk.
Yeah. And I agree. Just a little catchy phrase will stick with you. So I did appreciate that too. That's awesome. Any other thoughts on that list? And I know it's kind of hard sometimes to admit, but perhaps are you in an organization that might be change averse? How does status quo bias show up for you? Is that perhaps why we're not tackling some of these ideas on ND?
I have a lot to say, by the way, so I'm just trying to keep it together. I
I know
want
I could keep talking, but I want you to go.
this entire presentation to me felt like I knew we were gonna give this presentation, but I didn't know how impactful it was gonna be. Even I had seen the slides ahead of time, but until she started giving the presentation and I saw how it came together, I realized that this felt like every single person in HR in a leadership role, like they needed to hear this message the way she presented it. Like it felt like you're seeing all the phases of an employee life cycle. And then she's giving you the scenarios of look where you could be messing up, but you're thinking you're doing the right thing. And I kind of felt like 101, like if you're just starting out in your career, this is foundational to you learning to like think in a different way to support other people who may not be thinking like you. So that's, I guess that was my emphasis on it, was I loved it so much that in my mind I just keep thinking of how can I take this to the next level, like how can I support our customers with this information.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point where you say something about are people able to speak up about this? And that's that piece of psychological safety too. Are you the outlier that only sees it and 42 other people at your workplace don't care? So how can you infiltrate and speak up and feel safe speaking up? Again, using your privilege to help these people. I love too the part about the autism mom. And Liza, help me fill this in. I believe I heard her say she has gotten feedback from people in the community saying that she should not be calling herself an autism mom. Did I hear that correctly?
You did,
But
and
she
from a
said something,
negative
my
perspective.
son says it's okay, and I'm going with my son because he is leading me in this work. But help me fill that in if I'm missing part of that. I was intrigued by that.
Yeah, you definitely got it. I think it was a question from the audience about speaking like for other people in terms of making assumptions about somebody may disclose, but then you make assumptions about how able they are to do their job or how much support they need. So having people sort of speak for themselves, that people first language, like, and anybody else who wants to fill in can fill in as well. I don't know, Lashika, if you wanted to. Did you want to add something?
No, and you're spot on 100%. So you share, that's exactly what she said. And I also think that's important too, that she called out that her son, who has been diagnosed with autism, said, "No, mom, this is you. This is what you're called." And I think that's important. And there was another nugget that she mentioned, when folks are not sure how to address someone, just simply ask them. Just ask,
Yes.
right? Don't try to assume. There's no need to beat around the bush. Just ask them.
Mhm. I think that is such a great tip, again, across all identities. Because sometimes people will say, oh, well, I once worked with a wheelchair user and she needed this. Right, you knew one, so you can't make that assumption about everyone else. So I did appreciate that, to just ask, and every person is going to be a little bit different on what works for them. Yeah, that's good.
I felt like she was modeling allyship. So,
Yeah.
of course, she's living that world of being an autism mom, right?
Yeah.
So she's having to understand what accommodations look like and
Mhm.
imagining her son going into a workplace. What could that look like based off of her raising her son? Like, what
Mhm.
environment would work for him? So, like, why wouldn't we want to hear from this autism mom who has raised an autistic child? So, I feel like that's true allyship, right? She's
Yeah.
identified herself as able as not as neurotypical, I think that's the term. And so she's seeing, like, as a neurotypical person, let me tell you what we could be doing better, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what we need anyway in this world that's not called DEI anymore. Is we need sometimes people on the other side, right, who are not feeling the marginalization, to step up and say, look, I've done the work, let me tell you how we can do the work.
Yes, absolutely. It was so great. I loved it.
Can I add something else?
Yes.
I also appreciated the fact, do y'all remember when there was a slight knocking sound every now and
Yes.
then throughout the webinar,
Mhm.
and you called it out. I thought that was really great, and that was such a great teachable moment because
Mhm.
it was a time when she was able to explain stimming. That could have been the first time anyone had ever heard of stimming, because she said that she thought maybe the knocking was her son. So
Mhm.
even though it might have been a technical issue, I don't know what was going on. It didn't matter. I think that was such a great teachable moment in that moment. That was really great. Do y'all remember that? Did y'all have anything
Yes.
to
Oh,
add
yeah.
to that?
It was powerful. And
I
how did that
hear it.
feel in real time?
Yeah, and it was distracting, but I guess it wasn't distracting to me to the point where I couldn't pay attention to the webinar. Like I could hear it, but it was just kind of like my dog barking, I guess, like they're barking. What are you gonna do? But I can see how it can be disruptive to a person who they can't even function because that knocking, and then they're anticipating the knocking happening. And when did the knock happen? Why is it happening? Can you, just for my purposes, because I don't know what it is, are you saying stemming?
Yes, it's
Explain
stemming.
that to me. I didn't know what that was, and
I'm
maybe I thought I heard the wrong thing, but I also didn't want to stay too long in the topic.
Yeah, so stemming is it's a short phrase that means overstimulation, overstimulating. I highly recommend, if you are really serious about this work, or you have a loved one that is neurodivergent, there is a great magazine. I don't know if you can see this, but I'll tell you what it is. It's the magazine is called Very Well, and it's an Autism, a New Understanding edition. And I think it's just because it's April, it's Autism Awareness Month. But I highly, highly recommend this magazine. And it talks a lot about stemming and other terms that are frequent in this. And the only reason why I know is I'm an autism grandma. So that's stemming, and my granddaughter stems a lot of different ways. So for her, she stems with tapping. So we may see her tapping. She also stems moving her hand. She'll stem making noises, but it's a lot of tapping. So that's stemming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was awesome watching that play out in the video, but wondering like how was that in real time. I loved that, of just jumping in and asking that question. So it was really beautiful.
So let me ask Sherry, I haven't watched the full recording. When you watch the recording, can you hear this knocking?
So that's what's really interesting. I did not hear the knocking, but I was at my desk in the family room listening. My husband was in the room and had TV going, and the dogs were milling about. So I don't know if I had enough background things going on that I just didn't hear it, but I could not hear it. So when it came up, I was kind of like, what's happening? I don't hear anything.
So Zoom kind of eliminated it from the recording, I guess, for the audio.
Maybe.
But then because we were live, right? I guess live, we're hearing all the sounds. So that's
Perhaps.
interesting. Maybe even some people's computers, I don't know whether there's advanced microphones, weren't picking up the knocking. So that could even be a consideration, right? Background noise.
Yeah.
Eliminate. So anyway, thank you. I just learned a new term. Now that I see the definition, I know exactly what you're talking about, because it's a way for coping, right? It's a way to sort of like manage, right? Manage all the emotional stimulation maybe they're feeling, or whatever the stimulation is happening. It's a way for them to calm themselves, I guess, right? Yes. Thank you.
That was great. Anybody else have comments on any of these other pieces before we move on? I don't want to linger too long if you want more time, but want to acknowledge any of those topics you might want to touch on. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody jump in. So let's go back to other April-ish ideas. So Equal Pay Day, does anybody have anything on that? Mother Earth, Day of Peace, books, resources, National Pet Day, anything you want to weigh in that. And then I should just add whatever else you need and you want to brainstorm and bring to this group. I love hearing from all of you, and everybody has such diverse backgrounds, and the different states we're in, I think, makes a huge difference in the work that we're doing. Matt, what do you have for us?
Okay, I have a question. In this given time and space, in particular, when we're talking about showing up as allies, I think. So a few months, about a month ago, I was asked to be on a panel that specifically, and it's timely, and I just want to get everyone's feedback on this, because it was specifically looking at neurodiversity and neuroinclusion in the workplace. And when I was first contacted to be on this panel, I responded and said, listen, I'm not this is not my specialty in the DEI space. There are things that I do in my own practices that try to be inclusive and neuro-inclusive, but this isn't my place to be. I want to be clear about that. And so they said, okay, that's fine. We want to hear what you're doing. Fast forward, I've now been asked to speak again on neurodiversion later on this year, and I am having the same conversation. And as a DEI practitioner, I'm conflicted in, and part of it is that it's my alma mater, and they want to highlight alumni in these things. And I'm conflicted as a DEI practitioner, and I'm curious everyone's thoughts on this being in the DEI space. I don't want to detract from someone else having the opportunity who that is their bread and butter. But I also know I don't necessarily, I know some people who, I mean, this speaker sounds amazing, and I know some people I could hunt the ball to, but I also know that they're looking for alumni of my university. So I'm conflicted, and I'm curious people's thoughts on, speaking to something that you can speak to respectfully, but also isn't necessarily like
Your
your
lived experience, like that's
Right.
you know, but you don't live. I guess.
yeah.
Maybe it's as simple as you being with that person and like saying like when you're in these roles, you're not always the expert, even though I am an alumni and I'm an expert in general on DEI topics. There are people that are best suited to talk to this, and I would be doing you a disservice as people that are in the audience to deprive you of listening to somebody who is an expert. And so as a professional, I reached out and found somebody that can fill that space, but just kind of like showcasing, because I don't know if the audience is students or if it's other alumni, but if it's students, then I think it's especially impactful for them to see somebody say, hey, I'm not the expert, but I found the answer for you. And like kind of doing something like that might be kind of cool.
Love that.
Yeah, I would just also like to say, yeah, I don't see that there's any concern about that as far as if you are respectful to the conversation, as well as that you've, given your best as to educating yourself in the topic at hand. I presented at a conference on managing transgender in the workplace, the transition to transgender in the workplace. And I did not see myself as an expert in that field beforehand. And then they published it in their newsletter. So it was an interesting experience, and I learned a huge amount just preparing for that presentation. So I think it's great for you, and if it educates the your folks there at the conference, I think that's great.
And I do understand your question, Matt, because I've been in those situations before too. And then I'm always thinking of sponsorship. Okay, is this my time when I'm supposed to sponsor somebody else that could come in? And sometimes, yes, but you also said some of those nuances of this. Like, yes, you're a graduate of the university, they want to showcase your work. And you also do have a deep understanding of the topic because of the kind of work you do. We cannot be in learning and development roles and not understand the needs of indie people. So I have a feeling you probably are a little more expert than you're giving yourself credit for. So it's nuanced, right? It's also that yes and that we were talking about. I think part of that is you being aware of it is one of the foundational pieces. Like you're aware of it.
I
Yeah.
can see that.
Obviously,
I
they
can see
loved
the
what you brought.
optics. Yeah, but I can also see the optics of somebody who is identifying and they just happen to not have been seen. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, why did
Yes.
they reach out to me? I graduated from there. Like, what? Like, I was at the disabilities office. Like, they know that I have this disability. Like I can totally see somebody going there. So
Yes.
I would
Yes.
say, Matt, you as the expert, ask them to do their due diligence of even identifying a student, a current student or a current staff member or faculty member that you can like you can interview them so that you can bring that thought leadership on top, but then just
Yeah.
make sure you have a current student or a current or an alumni, hello, if they find one, or
Yeah.
a student, sorry, a staff member or a faculty member. Find somebody on campus that's even current. You add your alumni on top of that as the thought leader. But I would say I wouldn't do it unless you find that person, because as an alumni of a university, I have seen that happen, and then I go, "What? Like you don't know that I graduated from here, and I am Black, and it's Black History Month, so now you're gonna just go find other." No, I'm kidding. I'm totally,
Right.
Yeah,
but I am.
I'm
but
not
it
bitter. I'm not
happens.
bitter about it.
Yeah, but it happens.
Yes.
Listen, no,
It's some of those panels that are put together for women something something, and the panel happens to be all men, and it's not focused on what can men do as allies. Like, hello, we need to be better. And I did see you post about it, and it looked like a extensive panel. So I was assuming that some people represented that identity that were on the panel. So that also makes me feel better about the situation. So
yes. In that panel in particular, there was someone who identified as autistic, there was someone who identified as having ADHD and anxiety, and someone who also had ADHD but also researches it. So I just kind of brought like a corporate perspective of, listen, ask my therapist. I'm sure I have something floating in there, but nothing diagnosed. So it's so yes, so I brought more of the like corporate HR, how can that be addressed from that perspective on the panel? And I think I love the feedback. I really appreciate it because I do think having it, Lisa, to your point too, and bringing somebody in and using that, Sherry, to what you're saying, to like advocate for somebody else who can be put on that. Use my experience of like, okay, I'm comfortable being in front of people and I'm comfortable putting this together. Let me bring you into this world.
and
It'll
also
feel
Matt, I
full
feel,
circle.
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I
I'm
was
sorry.
just gonna add, it'll feel full circle for everyone because you're
Mhm.
Mhm.
alumni, and then you also helping current, so it kind of feels like,
Yeah.
yay, beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the dynamic of a panel is what I was going to say is also different. If you were just a solo speaker for 50 minutes, I don't know that that would be appropriate, but I think on a panel and the way it was set up with everyone's little pieces of expertise, I think that is a beautiful combination.
Yeah. Y'all,
Thanks
that was
for
my burning
asking.
question. Thank you all. Oh my gosh. I
But
appreciate you all.
your question was so good because it's about many things. A
Yes.
lot of times in our work, we're asked to represent identities or things that we don't have experience with, like Kevin mentioned, right? And like I'm on the Pride Corpus Christi board, and I've had to give a presentation before, and I present myself as an ally. So it
Right.
feels, oh my gosh, I know a lot, but like, am I the person to like go and like give that interview? Like, I always feel like 100% no, I am here to elevate. So you're asking the right question because we've all been there.
Right
And I feel
on.
like as DEI people, it's very normal for us to provide information. It's like we can speak to a lot of different, we can do the research because we know not everyone's going to, and we can speak to a lot of these things, but we can't necessarily, Lisa, to your point, speak to the lived experience
Mm.
of what it actually is like. We can't give that. And so finding that balance, I
Mhm.
think,
Yeah.
is challenging.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
I hate to be that person who's like, oh my gosh, I have this burning question and I want everyone's thoughts and then dash, but I
So
have
you gotta
to
go.
I have to dash. Thank you all so much. This is always a pleasure. I look forward to next month.
Before
Thanks
you
for
go,
coming
Matt,
on.
let's take the picture. Okay, I know you probably have just a couple of seconds, but I can go super
Fun.
fast. Hey, Sherry,
Let
do you
me,
yeah, stop the share real quick, and we
it's
can
way
take
at the bottom. Hold on. Ah, come on.
Okay, so everybody will just take a quick photo so we can get a photo, I guess. 1, 2, 3, say cheese. Okay, I got the pictures. We're good. Bye, Matt.
Bye, y'all.
Yay.
That's awesome. I was going to say one really quick thing. You know how we were talking about what do you have to hide at work? And so many of us have different parts of our identity we hide. So some of you know I do work in the ageism world. And the other day I was with an organization and just somehow people were talking and it came up they wanted to know how long had I been married? And in my head, I started doing the math. It wasn't like an intentional negative thing, but it was just out of curiosity and somehow it fit the conversation. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh no, if I tell them how long I've been married, they're going to be doing the math to figure out how old I am. And I'm thinking, is it safe to say it? And I kind of felt like, okay, it's a safe group. But I prefaced my answer by kind of saying that. I'm like, yeah, I've been married for 41 years. And you all are probably going to do the math right now and figure out how old I really am. And they all kind of laughed. And then we had a good conversation around it. They said they'd never thought about that before as just a simple question being something that could maybe be an identity that people are hiding. So I think we do have to kind of think about some of those ramifications. And of course, we can't think of everything, but that's just a simple example. So I don't know if anybody else has had anything like that happen, not necessarily with age, but just something simple that you maybe had to reveal something you weren't maybe planning to.
I've known some people who removed their years of graduation because I've had managers sit down with a spreadsheet and go, oh, here's the over 40. And I said, did you really take those resumes and do that?
Yep.
And they said, yeah, I saw the year of bachelor's or high school and did the calculations. And I said, I don't even want to look at the document you're holding up to me because I have no clue why you decided that needed to be part of the not here where I'm at now, but a former company. And they would sort the candidates without even reading the resume. Here's John Smith, blah, blah, over 40, under 40. And I went and make general assumptions. Oh, this woman's under 40, hasn't had kids, so she's going to need time off and she won't be here. And this person's over 40, et cetera. And it's like, wait, what? And so I tell a lot of people, remove your years of graduation from your resume because there are some out there, unfortunately, that, and they said, well, and I've had two different approaches. One is like, you know what, if it's a company that would do that, I don't want them to interview me.
Mhm.
So I leave the year there specifically because it's like, yes, do your math, make your assumptions, but if that's what you're looking for, I don't want to work for you. And I
Mhm.
said, well, okay, that's a different spin than doing that. And they said, why waste my time going to an interview? It's not a place I want to work.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of research on those type of things of what can we do to protect ourselves. And that is one, yes, leaving your years off. But also there's many applications, and I did some like prodding around when I started studying ageism, but you still have to enter your graduation years when you have to manually enter everything. I don't know if I'm explaining, there's maybe a term for that, but you have to go through the form. You can't just submit your resume. So it still gets you. And even if you try to enter, because I tried to enter like 1900 to see what it would do, and you just can't get around some of those systemic things. But yeah, it's awful. I found some research the other day that said over 50% of recruiters in the United Kingdom say that 57 is absolutely non-hireable, anyone over 57. And just in the country of England itself, that's 4.2 million people. So there again is a huge talent pool with a ton of great experience that we're not even acknowledging. But thanks for sharing that, Barbara. It's really enlightening.
I actually kind of like it from two perspectives. You took me on a little roller coaster there, Barbara. At first, I was like, oh, heck, let me go to LinkedIn and try to figure out how to remove my dates from my graduation, right? And then you flipped it and said, but hold on. If you see my dates and think I'm not hireable because of my dates, then I don't even want to work there. So I kind of was like, okay, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved how you kind of like did the spin zone on us. I loved it.
Well, it was interesting with the person I was talking to who was asking, I'm sure we all get the, hey, would you take a look at my resume and tell me good, bad, or indifferent from friends and colleagues? And when I said that and they spit it back, I went, well, there's a fresh perspective. I had gone to the, wow, how dare you do, oh, well, you're right. I probably wouldn't want to work for a company that's a filter before you even look at somebody's qualifications.
So gross, and it's so rampant.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to prove. It's a lot of it's encoded language, so there's a lot of pieces to it that are interesting.
You know, when we were at the webinar with Latoya, and she was walking us, not walking, I apologize. She was going through the scenarios.
Mhm.
She was like, scenario, and then she would say
Yeah.
what it is and then what the reaction is and how we were having those emotional reactions. And then people in the chat were saying, oh my gosh, that happened to me or whatever, right? And it kind of got me thinking about how important it is. Like right now, you shared, Sherry, Barbara, you shared, like these personal stories and reflections on actual things that happened. I think that's what connects the dots for this work. Because I almost felt like oh my gosh, like we need more of this. Like, is there a book of scenarios that I can just go through? Almost like if you're doing law, I always feel like lawyers are just reading cases so they can study case law and just learn how cases are won or whatever. And like in this work, maybe, yes, we know the theory, but we need to study like the realness of like, okay, yeah, this is their policy, but let's see how it operates in action, you know? I don't know. It just got me thinking about how I would love to get into, like, if y'all ever, like, now that I've put it in your head, if you ever get into a space where you notice that there's a group of HR people or learning and development people and they're kind of doing scenario-based discussions together, I would love that. I would love to be in a space where people are sharing things that have happened.
Mhm. I
Like,
do think there's so much power there. I agree.
yeah, like a nice collection
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
stories. It's like reading Reddit stories sometimes, right? I don't know if y'all read Reddit, but some people share some pretty cool stuff, and you're just like, your neighbor did what? You know, and you don't even know who these people are, right? But you learn what, like when you see your neighbor doing something, like, oh, I've seen that happen before. Like somebody posted about that, right? So
Yeah.
this is kind of like for us, right? Like in HR, like where are they sharing these stories of things that happen anonymously, right?
Yeah. All right, we're closing in on time. Does anybody have anything else that they need help from these great minds that are on the call today? I learned so much from everyone. This is so great.
Exactly. No,
Oh,
I don't have anything I need. I just want to tell everybody we're all fighting a tough battle, obviously. But that leaning on each other and like minds is such a good resource and so helpful, more than Google searching and all the rest of this stuff, that I find my colleagues in the field, well, I did have that one scenario come up, and here's what we did, and here's what we did wrong,
mhm.
or here's what we did right. And I just appreciate all of you.
Yeah. We appreciate you too. Thanks for being here. Safe
We
travels on your flight.
Yeah, I
Thank
know. If you missed it, I don't know if y'all heard that Barbara schedules her things around this club meeting. So I feel extra special for
Well,
for
I'm
you
traveling
being here.
traveling for bad reasons, have to go let somebody go and do the bad. So I said, I want the
Oh,
positive to take with me on the trip.
yeah.
Mhm.
Oh,
We all have those, you know.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey, I wanted to mention before we close off real quick, that I got a chance to interview. I don't know if you all know who Temple Grandin is. Dr. Temple Grandin. There's like a whole, I didn't know who this person was until they just happened to pop up on my Google search when I was looking up autistic professionals. But apparently there's an HBO film and all these things, and Lifetime Award winner, right? So Jocelyn's like, yep, I know who that is. So I got to, she wasn't able to meet to make the webinar. She was supposed to be our speaker for the webinar. So she wasn't able to make it. And then she was gonna make it today, but then something happened with her travel, so she couldn't make it. I interviewed her yesterday, the only time that her and I could get together. So I wanted to share just the raw cut of the interview. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but I just wanted y'all to hear from her because honestly, this woman is amazing. And yeah, if you don't know who Temple Grandin is, this is an autistic woman who has literally turned like a whole industry upside down because of her visual thinking. So she's a great person, I guess, to hear from. So that's her interview. And she's the one who recommended that Bill Gates book. I think she said Source. And she's the one who even said that Bill Gates is autistic. And I guess from that book, Source Code, um, he explains how his parents raised him. And she says it's exactly how her parents raised her as an autistic child
Mhm.
to become high performing.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway,
If you guys can see, oh, I have the blur on, but I have a picture with her.
oh,
Ah,
I know
that's
you
you
cool.
have
can't
a
see it.
picture with her?
Mm-hmm. I
What,
met her at a
Jocelyn?
conference years ago.
Tell us.
Oh,
Well,
so
send me the
cool.
picture and tell us what. How did you meet her? What? Tell us.
She was a speaker at the charter school convention here in San Diego, and talking about autistic and how we can help support them in our schools. And I got to do a meet and greet with her and talk with her a little bit. And she gave me some advice for my family member and how I can help support him in his life. And so it was a really cool experience. Her number one thing was to say, don't let them get into video games, because that is something that is a big dopamine hit for them often. And so that's been kind of an interesting tale.
That's super interesting. Wow. Jocelyn, I'll be in San Diego in a couple months speaking at a conference. So
Oh, yay.
it'd be really cool if we could meet up.
That would be awesome. Yeah. What kind of conference is it for?
It's SHRM National.
Okay, nice.
I'll be there speaking on ageism, of course.
And we've been seeing you on LinkedIn with all the SHRM stuff you've been doing. Congratulations. You're doing great.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That was kind.
All the Sherry Collins, you're the globetrotter for us, so we can travel through you, okay? But also
Oh, that'd
speaking
be
at
great.
conferences, your topics that you speak on, they spark joy. That's kind of how I think of it. So thank you for all you do.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks
Yeah.
everybody for being here. This was a highlight of my month. I really appreciate it.
Jay
Okay.
Shetty, I love Jay. He speaks
Oh,
so well. I don't know what it is about his presence. Calm.
that's
And I've
awesome.
never met him in person. I guess it's just from YouTube, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to know everybody. I
Was-
haven't really even checked the schedule except for when I'm doing my thing. So good to know. Thank you. Thanks for being here, Kevin. Oops, I missed him. He's gone.
yes.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful month. I know somebody had asked what the topic is for next month, and I don't have the answer to that. I just know it's on Thursday, May 15th, so hopefully everybody can be there.
Yes. And if there's not a topic from our host, I guess facilitator, it's gonna be probably what the topic is about for the webinar the day before, which is gonna be about chaos. How
Oh,
can you build connection in chaos? So like you're
mm,
having conflict with somebody, but then you're moving towards a stronger connection. Like I guess
mhm.
there's math to it about why conflict is also a good catalyst to more trust. I don't know. So
Oh,
I guess our speaker will tell us, right? I don't know if y'all agree, but when you're disagreeing with somebody, you're being honest with each other. And most people are not wanting to be disagreeable. So they're kind of like checking their truth so that they can go, oh, I don't want to be disruptive. So, sure, I get it. Versus, no, I don't agree, right? So I feel like sometimes that conflict causes building of more trust because we know that no matter what, we're going to be honest with each other, right? We may
yeah.
not agree, but we're honest with each other. So there's something to that, I think. So
Super interesting. This was beautiful. Have a great
yes,
month, everybody, and we'll see you on maybe Wednesday for the webinar, if not on Thursday the 15th.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much. Have a great day, all.
You too. Bye-bye.